In the rolling hills of southeastern Turkey, a quiet landscape hides one of the greatest archaeological discoveries ever made. For thousands of years, the world passed over these mounds of earth, never realizing they concealed a chapter of human history far older and far more advanced than anyone imagined. Then, in the 1990s, archaeologists uncovered the unthinkable. Beneath layers of soil lay vast stone circles, monumental pillars arranged with purpose and symmetry, carved with animals, symbols, and stories from a forgotten age. This place is called Göbekli Tepe, a site built more than 11,000 years ago, long before writing, metal tools, or organized cities. Its pillars rise taller than a person. Some weigh more than 20 tons, and every one of them was shaped at the very dawn of civilization. What makes Göbekli Tepe extraordinary is not just its age, but what it represents. According to our old timelines, humans at this point were nomadic hunter-gatherers, moving with the seasons. But these builders were far more settled and organized than anyone realized, turning these hills into a permanent cradle of human innovation. They were not supposed to build monuments. They were not supposed to carve megaliths. They were not supposed to organize large workforces or construct ceremonial centers. And yet, that is exactly what they did here. Göbekli Tepe challenges everything we thought we knew about the origins of civilization, revealing a world where people came together to build something monumental, long before farming, writing, or cities even existed. It is a window into a forgotten chapter of humanity, a story carved in stone, and the beginning of a mystery that stretches far deeper than the history books ever imagined. Archaeology tells us they lived more than 11 millennia ago, a time long before writing, cities, or organized states, an age when it was thought human groups survived solely by hunting wild animals and gathering plants from the landscape. And yet, the builders of Göbekli Tepe were anything but simple. They shaped monumental pillars from limestone bedrock, transported them across uneven ground, and arranged them with careful planning into vast, circular enclosures. These were not the acts of small, wandering bands. To create structures of this scale, hundreds of people would have needed to work together, cutting, hauling, carving, and assembling each massive piece. The pillars themselves reveal astonishing skill. Their surfaces are smoothed with precision, their edges are perfectly straight, and their abstract shapes show deliberate geometry. But it's the carvings that reveal the most. Foxes, snakes, wild boars, cranes, and vultures. Creatures that held deep symbolic meaning for the people of this ancient world. Some pillars even depict human-like figures, with arms, hands, and belts carved directly into the stone, suggesting mythic beings or ancestral guardians presiding over the sacred enclosures. The level of artistry is far beyond what we once believed hunter-gatherers were capable of. To create Göbekli Tepe, the builders must have shared stories, rituals, and a worldview powerful enough to unite entire communities. This was more than construction. It was a cultural revolution, one that began not with agriculture or cities, but with belief. The people who built these pillars were the first to gather in large groups to create something symbolic, something sacred, something greater than themselves. And in doing so, they were a part of changing the course of human history. Across the stone circles of Göbekli Tepe, the pillars rise like guardians of a forgotten world, and every surface tells a story. Carved into the limestone are animals that once roamed this ancient landscape. Foxes baring their teeth, snakes winding down the sides, wild boars, cranes, and vultures, all etched in clean, confident strokes. These are not crude carvings. They are detailed, expressive, and arranged with deliberate symbolism. Each animal may have held deep spiritual meaning, serving perhaps as guides, protectors, or forces tied to life and death in the minds of the builders. Some pillars are even more mysterious. Human-like figures appear with arms carved along their sides, hands meeting at the front, and belts and foxskin loincloths wrapped around their bodies. These aren't ordinary humans. They feel like mythic beings, ancestors, spirits, or guardians presiding over the ancient enclosures. And then there are the abstract shapes. H-shaped symbols, floating rectangles, circles, and lines whose exact meanings remain unknown. These motifs repeat from enclosure to enclosure, suggesting a shared language of symbols used by a people who left no written text behind. What makes this even more astonishing is the sheer precision of the craftsmanship. For a society utilizing stone and flint tools, the level of execution is extraordinary. The lines are clean and sharp, the surfaces smoothed with care, and the compositions arranged with a distinct sense of balance and intention. Göbekli Tepe is more than a gathering place. It is a library carved in stone, a symbolic map of a complex belief system from a time before recorded history. And though we cannot yet read every message, the pillars speak in a language that still resonates across 12,000 years. One of the most unexpected discoveries at Göbekli Tepe is not how the site was built, but how it was ultimately covered and preserved. For years, it was believed that each stone enclosure was deliberately buried by human hands in a massive, unified ritual. However, modern archaeology reveals a far more practical human story. Built into a sloped hillside, these structures were frequently breached by natural events. Debris from slope erosion, seasonal mudslides, and shifting earth that washed down into the circular spaces. Instead of clearing out thousands of tons of heavy rubble to rebuild the original grand designs, later generations took the path of least resistance. They leveled out the debris, left the collapsed walls where they lay, and constructed smaller, simpler retaining walls further inward, sitting directly on top of the ruins. This progressive patching created a distinct pattern over centuries. The enclosures naturally contracted, leaving a footprint of smaller rings inside older, grander structures. It reveals a cycle seen throughout human history, where the immense drive, precision, and architectural pride of a pioneering generation eventually gives way to a more pragmatic approach of simply making do. Over time, the monumental scale of the early pillars was abandoned for smaller blank stones, until the hillside finally reclaimed the site entirely. Yet, in this long process of decay and adaptation, Göbekli Tepe was inadvertently saved. By allowing the landscape to slowly swallow their world, these communities created an accidental time capsule, shielding pristine 12,000-year-old carvings from wind, rain, and time, waiting for a deep future to finally uncover them. The age of Göbekli Tepe is one of the most extraordinary aspects of the site. Radiocarbon dating shows that the oldest enclosures were built more than 11,000 years ago, around 9,600 BCE. That makes them older than Stonehenge, older than the current accepted date of the pyramids, and older than every known city in human history. At this point in time, the world was emerging from the last ice age. Glaciers still lingered in the mountains, sea levels were rising, and most human groups lived as nomadic hunters and gatherers. Yet here, on a hill in ancient Anatolia, communities were carving 20-ton pillars with a precision and symbolism that completely challenge our expectations. Even more astonishing is that Göbekli Tepe is not an isolated miracle. Archaeologists have completely blown the map open. They have identified at least 12 different related hilltop sites spread across a massive 200-kilometer plateau in southeastern Turkey. Collectively, this entire ancient network is known as Taş Tepeler, the stone hills. From Karahan Tepe to Sayburç and Sefer Tepe, we are uncovering matching pillars, intricate carvings, and shared architectural designs across an immense cultural landscape. Together, this regional network reveals a highly connected prehistoric world. These ceremonial hubs were built at the current believed dawn of human settlement long before the widespread adoption of agriculture or writing. This forces us to rethink one of the foundational ideas of human history: the long-held belief that complex ritual and monumental architecture emerged only after farming and permanent villages. Gobekli Tepe and the stone hills suggest a deeper truth. Shared belief, ritual gathering, and the construction of sacred spaces were not the results of farming. Instead, they may have been the very catalyst that drew people together, ultimately setting humanity on the path toward a settled existence. These sites are older than myths that shaped the ancient world, and older than the timelines we were taught to accept. The builders of the Taş Tepeler network show us a humanity far more capable, more organized, and more visionary than we ever imagined. Just beyond the hills of Göbekli Tepe, another ancient world is rising from the earth. Karahan Tepe, once a collection of unremarkable mounds, has become one of the most important archaeological discoveries of the past century. Like its sister site, it contains T-shaped pillars, stone enclosures, and carvings shaped at the very dawn of civilization. But here, the architecture goes even deeper. Archaeologists uncovered a vast sunken chamber cut directly into the bedrock. This space is filled with standing pillars arranged in a circle, each one rising like a silent witness to a forgotten ritual world. In the center stands a tall, smooth monolith. Its presence is commanding. Its purpose is entirely unknown. The craftsmanship mirrors Göbekli Tepe, yet the scale and complexity prove that these sites were part of that much larger 200-kilometer cultural plateau known as Taş Tepeler. One of the most striking discoveries is a carved human head emerging directly from the bedrock, a face frozen in time, its expression both lifelike and symbolic. Nearby, archaeologists found channels and basins. These features may have carried water, hinting at ancient rituals involving purification, transformation, or rebirth. Karahan Tepe reveals that Göbekli Tepe was not an isolated phenomenon. It was part of a much wider, deeply interconnected tradition, a spiritual and architectural system developed by some of the earliest complex societies on Earth. Together, these sites show that 11,000 years ago, people across this immense landscape shared beliefs powerful enough to unite them in massive, coordinated construction. What they were building and why they were building it remains one of the great mysteries of our ancient past. At Gobekli Tepe and across the stone hills, the stones do more than stand. They speak. Their carvings offer a rare glimpse into the beliefs of a people who lived more than 12,000 years ago, a time long before the invention of written language. Across the pillars, animals dominate the narrative. Foxes, snakes, vultures, cranes, and boars. Each one is carved with immense care. Each one carries heavy symbolic weight. These creatures were not random choices. They represented forces of nature, cycles of life and death, and the spiritual world as understood by these ancient builders. The vulture, for example, appears again and again. In many early cultures, vultures were linked with the transition between the living world and the realm of the ancestors. The fox, lean, sharp, and cunning, may have symbolized guidance, protection, or the shamanic journey between physical and spiritual realms. Other carvings resemble abstract symbols, H-shapes, floating rectangles, and geometric patterns that repeat from site to site. These motifs hint at a shared symbolic language. It was a complex system of meaning, understood across the entire network of communities that built these sacred enclosures. And then there are the human forms. The arms, hands, belts, and stylized torsos suggest figures of immense authority. Mythic beings, ancestors, or guardians of the enclosures. Taken together, these symbols reveal a worldview rich with meaning, a cosmology that united the natural world, the spiritual realm, and the human experience into one shared narrative. Even without writing, these early builders expressed their beliefs with stunning clarity. They carved a symbolic language that still resonates across 12,000 years. Göbekli Tepe and the stone hills force us to rethink the very origins of civilization. For decades, history textbooks taught us a simple progression, that agriculture came first. We were told that farming created surplus food, which allowed people to settle down, form permanent communities, and eventually build temples. But the staggering evidence across this landscape suggests a far more complex story. These monumental sites were conceived at what is currently believed to be the very dawn of human settlement, just as the first experiments in cultivation were beginning to emerge. Based on current evidence, this level of cooperation was unprecedented and sparked an entirely new stage of human life. Organizing these large gatherings required massive coordination of food and resources. Because of this, archaeologists believe that the staggering demands of these massive construction projects actually drove the need for predictable food supplies, encouraging the first crucial steps toward farming. In other words, it wasn't agriculture that made these sacred spaces possible. It may have been the spaces themselves that made agriculture necessary. These sites may preserve one of the most important turning points in human history. According to current archaeological understanding, they were built during a period when human communities were beginning to shift from highly mobile lifestyles toward more permanent forms of settlement. A world moving from temporary shelters toward lasting structures built with purpose and meaning. The Taş Tepeler network offers a remarkable glimpse into the emergence of increasingly complex societies. Here, we may be witnessing some of the earliest known examples of large-scale cooperation, shared belief systems, and monumental construction. While many questions remain unanswered, these ancient stone circles remind us that humans have long sought connection, identity, and places to gather around ideas greater than themselves. And among these weathered stones, we may be looking at some of the earliest chapters in the long story of civilization. When we look at Göbekli Tepe and the stone hills, we see far more than ancient ruins. They may preserve one of the earliest known examples of humans coming together to build something greater than themselves. We see belief expressed in stone, communities gathering with immense purpose, and a worldview powerful enough to unite people long before the existence of cities, writing, or kingdoms. Yet so much has vanished. No names, no stories, no written words to explain who built these sacred enclosures or why they were ultimately modified, abandoned, and left to the earth. The culture that shaped these places eventually faded, their knowledge disappearing into the long silence of prehistory. But what remains is extraordinary. Pillars that stand after 12,000 years, symbols carved with stunning clarity and intention, a vast network of early ceremonial centers that challenge everything we thought we knew about human origins. Gobekli Tepe and the Taş Tepeler network remind us that complex society didn't begin with cities, but with belief. That long before we built nations, we built stories. Before we built kingdoms, we built meaning. Before we shaped history, we shaped stone. And as we uncover these ancient sites, we are not just learning about the past. We are rediscovering the moment humanity first looked beyond raw survival and began to imagine something greater. A forgotten chapter, a vanished world, and a profound reminder that our journey as a species is far older, far more creative, and far more mysterious than we ever imagined. And as always, stay curious.